Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. It's good to see a full house for this lecture. I have the honor, the privilege of introducing our speaker tonight, Jonathan Jackson from We Should Do It All. And I'm particularly interested in We Should Do It All's work and the work that Jonathan and Sarah have been doing, because for me it falls under this category of non-architecture, which somehow ironically encompasses more than architecture could ever encompass itself. So We Should Do It All is, as they explain their mantra, their kind of guiding philosophy is a simple intention. And they use here a quote from Robert Heinlein from Time Enough for Love to talk about what they do and why they do what they do. So Robert Heinlein says, a human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, confront the dying, take orders, give orders, cooperate, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects. So that, I think, encompasses quite a lot of what they do and why they do it. And as evidenced by what Jonathan's wearing today, he even designs his own shoes. So I first was introduced to Jonathan when interviewing graphic designers to work with me on my current exhibition at the Center for Architecture. And once I started looking through his portfolio, I was quite shocked and impressed by all the work that was there. And it included, quite famously, the Nike Tech Pack installations done a few years back that Byron Merritt, the design leader, the design director for Nike at the time, came here to Syracuse a couple years ago and showed some of those projects. So he showed that and an entire floor of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, the beautiful David AIGA Freeland and Bond building in DC that you all know and love. And I asked about what their involvement was in that. They did all the graphics. Did you design all the details? Yes, we did. We did it all. They did it all. And they've won quite a number of design awards over the years for graphic design. And most notably, recently, they've won an Arc Daily Award in 2018 for Building of the Year in the Interior Architecture category. So for me, that was really amazing that you can start out in architecture, practice architecture, leave architecture, and in leaving architecture, actually begin winning architecture awards. So they are currently working with me, or they finished up their work with me recently on my exhibition at the Center for Architecture, Close to the Edge, The Birth of Hip Hop Architecture. Jonathan Jackson, who's here, is the founding partner. He has a bachelor's degree from Kent State University in architecture. He also worked in architecture for a few years in New York City at Architectonics and at Lindy Roy. Sarah Nelson Jackson, his partner, has a BFA from Boston University, focusing on graphic design and art history. And together they form We Should Do It All. So join me in welcoming Jonathan Jackson.
Hey everyone, thanks for coming out. I appreciate the full house. This is a great treat. I want to thank Syracuse for bringing me. I don't know if Michael's made it or if he's gonna make it, but I've digitally known Michael for 10 plus years and we've never met, so I'm looking forward to the opportunity. Also, I want to thank, of course, Saku. It's been fun to collaborate with you, and thank you for I don't know, maybe you suggested Michael, or sorry, you suggested us to Michael. Thank you. Kyle, he had to take off, I think, but, oh no, there he is. Thank you for the hospitality and the email exchanges, and Faye, Faye showed me around today and has been a great host and super talented. You guys should ask him about his other work, which I was blown away by. So yeah. And as Saku mentioned, this is this is the exhibition that we worked on together. Opening night was a huge hit. 700 plus people came out. A dance party, which is foreign to the Center for Architecture on LaGuardia Place. Usually architecture parties are a little stiff, and it was great. My cousin DJ'd. It felt like a family affair, actually. And your aunts and uncles were there. It was great. Yeah. So yeah, if you're in New York, please stop by. It's open till January. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna get started now. So, who are we? I'm gonna first start off. This is a little foreign to me. I normally don't talk by myself, so I'm gonna try to introduce myself first and then the team. I did an internship in 2001 with AIGA in Florence, Italy. They're mostly known for the Anteri winery just on the outskirts of Florence. My internship lasted from January to August of 2001, and right when I got home, 9/11 happened. But this studio is sort of a huge impact for me in the sense they're not just an architecture studio, but at the time they were producing 2 different magazines, architecture magazines within the studio in-house. So they had writers and editors and graphic designers all in the same space. And I went to their website before the talk, and this is a model that I had done for the studio in my time and working on the project. I'm pretty proud of that model still. It's, whatever, but I just thought it was cool after, that was 2001 and it's up on their website. The project didn't get built, but I'm pretty proud of that. And then the 2 magazines, this is one called Auditorium, and the other one is called Materia. And just to walk in and see a functioning studio that was doing more than architecture really opened my eyes and had a great impact on me. And Saku kind of took my fire. I was going to read this out to you guys, but it helps me actually get settled. I get nervous, so this quote settles me in. But yeah, take a screenshot, take photos or whatever, and keep it in your back pocket. So what I really love about this quote, for me, it reminds me that there's different avenues and ways of thinking about what we do on a daily basis. So this quote is a constant reminder, and we come back to it every now and then. So this is the team. Top left is our intern, David. He actually just left. Last week was his last days. We have a new one starting on Tuesday. David is a 2D graphic designer. And Amy, she's from the University of Michigan, 3D designer. Alessandra from Long Island. She is an art director and 2D graphic designer. Adrian from Paris, he is a graphic designer and type designer. Then we have Jenny, our project manager. She actually stays out in Portland and manages from there. Corey, he's kind of like the studio's, he's never settled. He has his own practice too, but when we need him, we collaborate. Him and I graduated college together in architecture, and he just became licensed, so cheers to him. And then my partner, Sarah, from New Jersey, and yeah, you don't need to know much about her. So, I'm just joking. Where are we? We are in Bushwick, Brooklyn, USA. You should come by if you're in New York. I mean that completely. We welcome visitors. Yep. What are we? Oh, that's a good question. So Someone once said that a designer's role is comparable to that of a curator, their purpose in part helping to shape the current landscape of the culture within each project. We are drawn to that idea rather than think of each challenge as a fleeting and disjointed thing, but instead a collection that we honor and are influenced by. It's ironic in many ways that we are curating projects and ultimately our landscape, yet these very same projects are simultaneously molding us as individuals and as a team. If the studio is a living, breathing entity that is partially fixed and partially malleable, outside events, clients, projects are in essence the factors that shape and transform and guide the studio's existence and practice. So for us, we see ourselves as the malleable metal piece that the goats are playing with, and then we are the little boy, and the clients are pulling the table from us. So Michael and Saku really wanted to invite me invite us because we are an alternative practice, and we found this quote, and I'm not going to read it to you, you should read it. We good? Cool. Of one or more things, and those things that we are thinking about is design. Design in our eyes can be one thing. That's why we tend to think of it. It's just one thing, whether you're doing architecture, graphics, industrial design, product design, what have you. We tend to think of it as one thing. That helps us tackle the different challenges that approach our studio. And the ones that are crossed out in red are what we're going to try to show you tonight. One project might have 5 of them, one project might have 1 of them, but this is sort of our capabilities on any given day. So finally, I'm going to get to the work. And the first project I want to talk about is Scapes, a fashion studio in New York. Scapes is a New York City made brand that celebrates the rebellious and creative woman. Scapes' intention is to externalize a woman's authentic inner cool through garments that bridge the ready-to-wear and streetwear markets. They seek to disrupt the male-centered streetwear market that has long overlooked women as their consumers. So these awesome young ladies we just moved offices. They were our neighbors, super talented. This was their branding before they came over and talked to us. They were down the hall. And it just didn't live up to the work that they were doing. So they approached us about basically providing a new brand for them. Sorry. Oops, didn't want to do that. There we go. So the brand seeks to create dynamic balance through juxtaposition of opposites, landscape and seascape, cityscape, and hard and softscapes. And I want to show you some of the stuff directly out of our presentation to them, our first presentation. I'm in love with process and showing process. I know a lot of studios like to show everything in the most clean and manicured way, but to come to a university and to a school just feels odd to do that. So I want to sort of walk you through our process and thinking of how we landed at 3 different directions for their brand. So this is Split Level Landscapes by Jeremy Miranda. I love his work. And I guess what drew us to this work was the idea of this juxtaposition of opposites. And these concepts bring together ideas of embracing the space between the passage and the ultimate contrast. So option 1 this is where we landed. This concept considers the high and low elevation opposites of landscape and seascape. It is between these 2 elements that Scapes best expresses themselves, using the split and the container as a tool to do just that. We created a strong contemporary typeface that is unnecessarily of doesn't have any unnecessary embellishment. So the logo just basically splits, creating a container or a window for content. And that's what we were talking about, landscape versus seascape, high, low. And then you see it manifested in stationary. The second option, when we speak about landscape, seascape, city versus nature, these translate into ideas of distance. It could be expressed as a passage. In the city, the crosswalk is a metaphor of this passage from one side to another. No matter the distance from one side to another, the Scape's logo is rewritten. Pause with spaces to create a crosswalk that unifies the space. The robust topography becomes the frames. So really studying topography and how that lives on the street and finding a typeface. This one's not custom. That can replicate that and give you that idea. Splitting it depending on the medium, filling it depending on the medium. And the third option. This approach reimagines Scape's pursuit of finding harmony through the contrary. Essentially, the pairing of two distinct typefaces creates a fresh language to embrace oddities and errors within each. Walking around New York, what I love about sort of the mom and pop shops and who they go to do their print work, these awnings and what have you, is the topography is always off and it's so beautiful, and when you try to replicate it, you can never do it quite right. It's a goal that we constantly think about, but we found a typeface that does have some oddities that we did appreciate. The S in the sands looks like it's upside down. It has a heavier top side. The C looks like it's tilted a little bit, where are you? Tilted a little bit back. So pairing these two typefaces felt really great in how we wanted to talk about that division, that juxtaposition of opposites. And then when you pair that with the photography that they have created for their brand, it felt like a perfect fit, where the sands would always be engaged with the cityscape and the serif would always be engaged with the actual fashion. In stationary, they're just jumping back and forth between the two. And does anyone, maybe some of you already know this, but do you want to guess which one they went with? Someone who doesn't know, like, anybody? No. Okay. This one. Uh-oh, not happy with it? Sorry. We were happy with all three, honestly, so we were just so happy we gave them a tough decision to make. But yeah, this is where they landed. And it felt right, it felt the most street. They're a streetwear company, and we can play with it in multiple ways. Cool. So the next project I want to talk to you about is called Uva, and they're out of Portugal. It means grape in Portuguese. Uva is an emerging furniture company developing local traditions through the lens of global design, technology, and innovation. Uva is empowering and reactivating rural economies of Portugal that are based in manufacturing. The family-owned company is releasing a series of chairs designed by non-traditional furniture designers, including London-based Kim Tom, New York-based Snarkitecture. You might have already seen this. Rafael Cardenas out of Architecture at Large, Sergio Rebello, and he asked us to design a chair as well. So we asked him, well, who's doing the website and the branding and all that stuff? And he was like, well, I don't know. And we were like, we got you. So with furniture design, the negative space is just as important as the positive. And the logo stems from that concept of the negative space. So UVA, is made up through a series of shapes. Very simple. Within the stationary system, the blue is the Portuguese blue that you see in the tiles as you walk the streets of Porto. It's actually, Sergio's designing a chair, but he's the owner with his sister. And Sergio used to work for Fernando Romero. He was the director of the New York office of Free. He has since left and moved back to Portugal. And this is the slip chair designed by Snarkitecture. It was at the London Design Fair. This is the website. I think it has more content now. This is a sort of an older video, but very simple website. News stuff up front. Contributors are the designers. About the company, and then the gallery of the first chair to be released. Give you a little insight into the background about the chair, the factories within Porto, or excuse me, in the countryside of Portugal, and then the bio of Snarkitecture. Very, very simple. It's designed to be e-commerce, it's just not implemented just yet. They're still getting some stuff together on how you can buy directly off the website. So that was the brand, and this is getting into our chair design. It's called the trunk bench. It honors the cork oak tree that is debarked in the debarked form. We were incredibly intimidated in designing a chair. It just felt like way over our heads. So we decided to take the easy route and design a bench instead. We made a really conscious decision to be awkward and clunky with the design. We thought beauty can come from the byproduct rather than it being the goal of it itself. So this is how it breaks down. The skin is circular, hollow and strong, acting as a protector for its owner, similar to the bark of a cork oak tree. The core is void alludes to a trumpet and announcing and celebrating the bench's material and conceptual roots. Ashwood is an ashwood trumpet and acts as the anchor for the bench, having dramatic openings at each end. The base touches the ground with four legs, and then has sort of this circular base within that. We ended up not being happy with this base and got the first mock-up back. You'll see it in the slides. But yeah, those are stained cork rings to create the gradient. And we understand that that's way too skinny for the legs. We know. The profile view, which I actually am pretty in love with. And then we started thinking about different colorways. Coming in 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. And then reconfiguring them in multiple ways. And we thought this could be used in the lobbies of something like Google or Apple or what have you. I don't know. The mock-up, which with a much bigger base. That's Sergio with his hands. That's Sarah over there. So this is still being thought about, still in production. We're going back and forth. We're thinking about changing the material from ashwood to having the cork switch from the actual chair to be the sort of trumpet-like middle portion. And then still thinking about multiple sizes and how that would look. The legs are now this design shows the legs that when you put them together, it actually looks like all one piece, and the legs are equally distant from one another. So we've tapped into a little bit of furniture design, and we're pretty excited on where that's going. The launch is supposed to be March next year. This is probably our most popular project, even considering the museum, but this is what people know us from. Nike North America brand design approached us to complete environmental rollouts in 2 places. Moynihan Station, next to, I guess that's 34th Street, and Nike's downtown flagship at the time, 21 Mercer. It's now called Nike Lab, for the release of their Tech Pack product series, which is 6 distinct fleece jackets that are constructed of 3-ply lightweight material, and keeps you incredibly warm, but it's incredibly light at the same time. So this is the site. I don't know if anyone that's going to be in the workshop tomorrow, but this is the model in the site that we'll be working in. Yeah, not much to say about this place. So under the moniker "Warm Without Weight," the environment immerses the consumer in a red space, providing a visual key of warmth. And as Saku mentioned, Byron Merritt and John Moon approached us about this issue, this problem to solve, and they were really instrumental in not only getting the project done, but getting it done in a timely manner. We had to do it twice within a month time frame, working simultaneously. So the one check at the bottom is the direction they went with. We kind of came up with a couple of different schemes, but essentially a large block that's been split up, diced, and split apart. And the project first started off at 21 Mercer, and then they hit us one day like, hey, we need to do this big launch for the US Open, and we have to do it twice the size at Moynihan Station. Simple floor plan, simple layout. This is Moynihan Station. Different rooms, but you just get the idea of the environment. So at Moynihan Station, there's 2 different functions that Nike took over. We designed that function as well. You can see it on our website, but essentially we wanted to create a lit pathway for the visitor to come through, and then up a stage, and then you would see these 5 huge light boxes with a VIP room in the back. And this event was for VIP and influencers only. So I would say a grand total of maybe 300, 400 people saw this event. That was up for almost a week. Yeah, it's just a zoomed in version of the plan. And the goal, is this working? Yeah, it's working. Okay. Yeah, the goal was to have everything on a track, and they would, as a presentation, you would slowly roll out the cases. That didn't happen, unfortunately, budget cuts, but it still came out pretty powerful. Each case is double-sided, standing 12 feet tall, 12 feet wide. It provides a display for specific garment types. The case consists of a structural perimeter ring with a jewel blocks-like interior that elevates the product, makes it look like it's floating. Using the same concept as multi-layering, the products themselves, we sandwiched the garments in a series of plexi, sometimes red, sometimes clear. But basically, that translucency allowed us to make sure that things looked like they were floating and being able to see through all 5 at the same time to reinforce that jewel box-like idea. And then continue with the idea of weightlessness, the products sort of float within the case. And to reemphasize that even more, we blacked out everything, lit the stage, and used a high gloss material to make sure that that looked like it was floating as well. The VIP room was draped with foam, sound foam, walls and light boxes and TV. And Sarah got to meet Rafael Nadal and brags about it to this day. Some cases had gray foam if we wanted to talk about something specific. And then this is the way that 21 Mercer turned out, which is basically a takedown of what we did at Moynihan Station. So yeah, both spaces were completed in, I misspoke, a 2.5-month time frame. And the concept acted as a template that was carried out globally. So right after this project, we took a vacation and went to Paris. And it was awesome because we were just walking down the street and saw in the Nike store, not exactly this, but a version of it. And we were just like, man, that's awesome. Like for that, our decks to be sent out that fast and then be executed across the globe was like mind blowing. So that was really cool. The project was a huge success, bringing influencers to the exclusive event, generating tons of press, and further establishing 21 Mercer as a leader in the retail destinations. And then from sort of a financial point of view, the product was released in August of 2014. And in the first quarter, at the end of September, shares hit a record high, driven specifically by the Nike Tech Pack apparel. And we think we were the cause of that. No, I'm joking. The next project I want to talk to you about is an environmental graphic project for Pandora media offices. They just got bought out, I think, actually. I forget by who, but before that happened, this happened. Acquired, they're mostly a West Coast-based company, and they got an East Coast-based space in New York, right near Grand Central Station, 48,000 square feet. We collaborated with ABA Studio in New York, and they handled all the architecture, and we handled all the environmental graphics, wayfinding, and signage. And this was over 2 floors. So we started off like highly conceptual and thinking about music and how we wanted to graphically express what music could look like within this space. And the architects were really on board with that. They had saw a previous project we had did called Hall & Partners and liked what we had done there. It was actually up when Saku was talking, that big blue thing. And we started off that way, and we presented ideas, and the architects were down for it. But Pandora was like, no, this is not what we're about. And we had to take a step back, and we realized Pandora is more straightforward with things, so I'll be nice. So we thought, what if we just came up with a simple idea of putting these amazing musical icons on the wall, grand scale, but we have to twist it up. We can't just present it a wallpaper. So what we did was, their portraits are made of 1-inch thick by 9 feet tall MDF louvers. So here you see Jimi Hendrix at the reception desk. And this wall is 136 feet long. So Diana Ross, Gene Simmons from Kiss, Bob Marley. And what's great, there's so many different programs happening behind this wall. There's a janitor's closet, but it looks good. That's a janitor's closet you kind of want to go in. This is a hallway to a bathroom. Miles protecting the freight elevator. Billie Holiday, Michael Jackson, and I believe that's Jay-Z. Here you see the door opens to a conference room. And what was great, we had this really good dialogue with the architects, and when they saw this scheme, they knew they had to go back and redo how the door system would work. So, and this is why we were talking earlier, I kind of said this all day, but architects and graphic designers need to be tighter, way before we get out into the workforce. We need to do it now. But simple things like us forcing them to go back and rethink how the doors could work to make this louver system work, just really bring out special moments within the project. The like in most workplaces, the conference rooms are themed. Here is genres of music, but we didn't want that to be too much. If you see typography, great, but the point of it was to be distraction glass. So I think this says hip hop all the way around that little orange cube. Yeah, there's a little bit of signage there, but yeah, typically just distraction glass. The next project I'm going to show you is Nike World Basketball Festival in Chicago in 2014. This is another project with Byron and John Moon. Those guys have been amazing to us within our Nike family. Moon has since left and gone to Samsung, but he's tried to bring us on at Samsung, so. This event hosts thousands of basketball players and fans for the world's most celebrated basketball cities. Sadly, at the time, and all the time, Chicago has major gun violence and murders, and just a sad state of affairs that happen day in, day out in that city. And Nike wanted to sort of interject some positivity for a weekend. So from Friday to Sunday, they had local Chicago talent, which is Chance the Rapper, Common, NBA players gave basketball workshops. There was a tournament of a city versus city tournament that Chicago actually ended up winning, all in this 3-day span. So pretty great. It was pretty wild. Like they had security lines and people were actually putting their guns into these bins. It's pretty amazing. Couldn't believe it, but yeah. This festival originally happened in 2010 in New York, and then has taken place in DC and in Spain. We were challenged with designing the event and exhibit space at the 63rd Street Beach House, right along the water. And yeah, the whole idea was to express Nike basketball stories through history, culture, community, and innovation. Our tasks included site investigation, program zoning, designing several distinct exhibition spaces. So this is the beach house in the summer, quite beautiful. Chicago's known for its ivy. We got all of it, so it was great. So as you go up the stairs, the first thing that you see is the 40-year Nike basketball timeline, which just took me way back to childhood. I'm a huge University of Michigan basketball fan, so seeing the Fab Five, Jordan's first shoes, so they had even like the conceptual ones that didn't even get released. I don't know, just if you're a fan, it was amazing. It should be noted that our friends shoot all of our work. Floto Warner, they do such a great job for us. I just want to mention them. And they shoot a lot of architecture and photography. So the timeline was built just as that aligned, but Nike wanted to include specific Chicago stories. So what we did was we opened up 4 secondary spaces within that timeline to tell just that Chicago story. So that has a different aesthetic, black material. I think it's just black OSB board painted. And that's what these photos, that's what's on the inside of those sort of cubicles. And I should mention the material choice is purposeful. You know, this idea of interjecting positivity comes with this idea of being understanding your self-importance, understanding what you can be. And these kids see these superstars and don't realize that this could be them. They could do something else that's non-related to sport, but to constantly remind them that they are important is why we use this mirrored material, and it kind of worked with what we did graphically, and I'll show you that soon too. So at the time, these were the new USA basketball uniforms. We needed to have a display for that. This one in particular got used in a couple of different stores across the country. It's pretty cool. They also, at the time, were releasing the new Hyperdunk shoe, and needed displays for that. So we basically took some characteristics of the shoe, blew it out. Yeah. So in thinking about community and reflecting and being aware of how important you are to yourself and others, the idea of using the community as a tool. We got local Chicagoans to be models for this famous photographer from Brazil. I'm forgetting his name, but and then have them on full display at 8 feet tall. It was a hit. It was one of the highlights of the exhibit for most people. Some great shots. So as I mentioned, workshops for the local kids. That's Anthony Davis. And then we use local Chicago street ballers paired with major NBA stars as that reminder of, yo, that guy's from around the block and he's up there with KD. Pretty amazing. So this was the full campaign throughout the city. Billboards. So I'm gonna shift to Marcus Smith. Speaking of Chicago, this is a Chicago kid. Amazing photographer. We discovered him through Instagram. We use Instagram as a tool to see who we want to collaborate with. Yeah, we found Marcus' work. We got this project out in LA for a Nike project, and got him to shoot the work, and we art directed. And he liked this so much that he asked us to do his promotional book. I just want to read you sort of our thinking behind the book. Contrast, similarities, complementaries, relationships. Color theory is an analytical breakdown of the work of Marcus Smith. This process dissects and investigates the disposition of Marcus's powerful visuals and represents them with considered comprehension. This method requests viewers to contemplate the work from a different perspective through the lens of color. So at the start of the book, we go from black and white, which is color, to more vibrant and bold colors, back to black and white as you close. And Marcus asked us to come up with design concepts around this idea of color theory. He had the title, he recognized what his work was doing, and we simply said, let's just do the DNA of each image. So this is just, we ran it through a program. Each image that we wanted to use through a program, and what came back to us are different values, and we put those values in harmony with the photography. Oftentimes when photographers ask us to do work, it's really important for us not to be overbearing as graphic designers and make sure that the work is shown in a good light. And I think here we found a really good marriage of graphics and photography. This image got it was top 10 photos of the year for PDN magazine. Also, I just want to highlight some things when we go back one. There's no red highlighted as a color value in that image, and we were blown away by it, and we ran it 10 times. And we found another program that did the same thing and ran it, and it didn't pick up, neither one of them picked up red. Just really interesting how those things work. So then we go from these very vibrant colors as the book is closing, we tone you back down. This is the cover. He was great because we just assumed he was going to want an image on the cover, and we presented this idea. He's like, that's the one. So we were blown away, and that's every image in the book. And then the index doesn't show the images either. We want you to read through color coding. The next project is the Nike Kevin Durant campaign rollout for his 8th shoe. This is back in 2015. So this text came from us, or sorry, it came from Nike in our brief. I just want to read it out to you. Don't blink, he's watching you. Don't stare, you'll only make it worse. Don't hesitate, he preys on your indecision. Don't hurry, he'll make you pay. It does not matter what you do, Kevin Durant is inescapable, invincible, inevitable. KD isn't your foe, he's your fate. And you're not a rival, you're nothing but a victim. With the game this efficient, precise, controlled, and ruthlessly vicious, it's impossible to depict his method of execution, only that it's coming. So in reading that, we were like, man, this is amazing. Like, to get a brief like this is just so much fun. So we instantly started going like, all right, let's look at some mood boards. It felt violent, right? And it felt, the words that came out to us were precision, precise, efficiency. And when you look at his game, if you watch him, I don't know if you guys are basketball fans, it actually is what those words depict. Our main task was to design the window display and what in retail they call the engage area. So more mood boards and just thinking about how we can get across what those words are trying to express. So you guys are familiar with Grasshopper. We use that as a tool within the studio. And this was one of the first images that we came back to Nike with, and they were like, and that turned into this. I just want to mention this too. This is a rendering by Dark Studio out in the UK. We love their stuff. They do a lot of work for architects, and we did their branding and website. So yeah, using that Grasshopper tool, with those words, and Michael Spoljaric is the creative director of Nike Basketball, and he tapped us to work on this project. And he tapped so many talented people to work on this campaign, and we have a video that culminates everything coming together. So how it turned out in the actual. Yeah, so it's basically a series of darts transfixed on a shoe, waiting for it to move. And you would think it would follow if it did. The footwear display within the store, we designed these as well. And then this is a video. So what I really like about that video, I think Michael used maybe 4 different studios to do different things. Us for any physical design, Hort out of Berlin, an amazing graphic design studio, to do the campaign sort of graphics. He used, I'm forgetting the other two, I'm sorry. But the fact that he was able to put that level of talent all together and work cohesively to put out a product that felt really complete. The idea of this sharpness, this precision was manifested in so many different ways, but it always rang true. And I think KD's favorite animal was a saber-toothed tiger, which was the direction for the shoe. But it kind of all worked, yeah. So the next project is the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. I told the group earlier how we got on board with this project. We got set up with an interview at Ralph Applebaum and Associates through a friend who used to work there. And we had just completed maybe a 23,000 square foot pop-up event in South Africa for Nike for the World Cup. And it was perfect timing because we really we had smaller exhibition projects, but when we showed them that, they were kind of blown away, and the interview went really well. We got the job as external designers that would be collaborating with Applebaum and Associates to design the third floor galleries. And when we got the news, we were extremely elated, but also we felt the weight of our ancestors saying, you better do this right. And yeah, I mean, if you go there, it's a lot to handle. We wanted more quiet moments, more places of reflection. We lost those battles, but I'm still extremely proud of what we were able to pull off as a whole team, and I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. But yeah, so yeah, our responsibilities for this project was 25,000 square feet of exhibit space. There is 86,000 total square feet of exhibit space, and the building is 300,000 square feet. It opened in September of 2016 to 103,000 people in its first 10 days. The black box is the museum. There's the White House at the north, where that green arrow is. The Washington Monument sits in the middle of the space. The Lincoln Memorial is to the far left. Jefferson Memorial is at the bottom. And our museum is integrated right on Museum Row with views out in multiple ways of Agi's beautifully designed skin. So in its first year, it got 3 million people. And I don't think we'll ever have a project with this many eyes on it. So we kind of reached our peak at, for me, 35, for Sarah, 31. But yeah, pretty crazy. And I just want to show you a little bit of our process and our thinking. If you go to our website, you can see we did an animated GIF of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of floor plans. But these are just some things that we thought were going to happen on the floor that we were working on at the time. There was rumors of we were going to get an airplane on that floor. We had the idea of creating sort of these controlled views into each gallery space. Then the idea of sort of more of an OMA type of approach, where you think about these chords, but you walk through this. You walk through that green. That green is volumetric, but these chords open up to reveal more interesting spaces. And then we started thinking about this idea of a pathway and the many voices that we can tell within that path. There are 4 galleries on our floor: sports, military, making a way out of no way, and power of place. And making a way out of no way were stories of unsung heroes that maybe you didn't know about, most likely you didn't know about. But we also saw that statement, that title, Making a Way Out of No Way, as a metaphor for the whole museum. And that would act as sort of the glue to connect each gallery space. So you have, oh, this has a laser? Oh. Yeah. Are you faint? Are you there? Oh, okay. So sports sits here, all the way down. Making a Way Out of No Way is just basically a skin. Power of Place is inside that skin, and military sits here. So in the development of thinking about making a way out of no way and this skin and how it can deliver content, we looked at so many different approaches, so many different cell types. Eventually we landed here. It just made the most sense. You're not going to see too much content realistically from these point of views. But Applebaum was sold on the design, and then we convinced the client, and it worked out pretty well. So on the upper levels are most likely going to be, or most likely were TVs or monitors, and then more specific content on the lower portions. So making a way out of no way really talks about 6 different categories: faith, press, enterprise, activism, organization, and education. So those are sort of the themes that those stories exist in. And again, it's a wall that wraps that whole box. And what we really liked about this development of this wall is that we can show things at different depths. It can carry different things. So in that way, it felt very flexible. Inside the making a way out of no way box is the power of place. We start off with the hub and an interactive moment within the space. And power of place is pretty interesting because it was putting the visitor in a particular time and place. So for example, the birth of hip hop was one of the displays. So that room was essentially everything that culminated in the birth of hip hop. This is the military gallery. And I will say a lot of our designs changed. We Should Do It All stayed on board until the design documentation phase. It's an agreement that we had with Applebaum. At the time, we were only 5 people, but it worked out perfectly for us. We were on the project for 5 years. But 3 of those years were like intense work, and then the last 2 were basically coming in once a month or whatever to check in on how things were going. Sports. It's funny, in the early goings, we created this undulating wall as a placeholder in foam core when we were working on a model, and it kind of just stayed. It never went away. I don't know. That wasn't the intent, but it kind of worked out. I'm not a big fan. Oh, crap. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of some of the detailing above, but you know, it is what it is. So on opening day, man, I got highly emotional. They had anyone that was there is Will Smith, Oprah, man, you name it, the Obamas, Henry Louis Gates, just amazing. So I got teary-eyed multiple times, seeing all these beautiful people celebrating a beautiful moment. Truly overwhelming. I got to experience it with my little boy. I was hoping to get that reaction. So the last project I want to show you is one that Saku talked about. That was a huge surprise for us. We collaborated with Studios Architecture. They have offices in New York, San Francisco, and Paris, I believe. But Nike brought us on maybe a year after Studios was already on board, maybe a year and a half. And essentially what happened, Nike was in Google's offices in Meatpacking. Google was expanding and kicked everyone out and forced Nike to move to Koreatown. So this is on 6th Avenue between 30th and 31st. And yeah, they have the first 6 floors, a deck, and then what you see above is apartments. Does anyone watch Billions on Showtime? Sometimes they use this to pan into his apartment. I just think that was pretty cool. Like watching it, like, oh, you know that movie. So it's 150,000 square feet. It includes a massive indoor basketball court, varied workspaces, a hand-tagged graffiti food truck, VIP and workout spaces, a Nike heritage-inspired VW van, and a 90-foot-long sedum-planted swoosh on the deck. So on the first floor, you come into the space. This is the reception lobby. Studios will tell you the idea of entering an arena and using this grand stair as your tunnel as you're coming out to perform was one of the overall themes and how they approached the architecture. From a brand point of view, I have to say I don't really believe it, but they wanted to implement it. It's called Look Up, Look Forward, and it has to do with how Nike is always sort of the leaders in innovation and things like that. The main directive, architecturally and graphically, was to highlight the synergy between New York City and Nike by examining sport through themed floors through the lens of New York City. And the direction is manifested in materials, imagery, illustrations, custom topography, and space. So a reception, the grand stair up. Wayfinding and signage, we did a custom typeface for this guy. The one on the right is ours, block Gothic to reflect the sort of verticality of New York. We wanted the garden to be very awkward at moments as a grotesque. And we feel like we got there with letters like Q, G, J, R, 0. Yeah. Icons were developed as well. And then thinking about signage and how that comes with the responsibility of ADA, we wanted that to be an opportunity not to just provide ADA, we can't break the law, but we wanted it to be integrated into our graphic system. So what we did was there's Braille at the left of every signage piece that you see, and then that Braille is integrated into sort of like an underlying system. So this is after you come up the grand stair. We collaborated with this amazing illustrator named Micah on these tiles. This floor's theme was called multi-sport. So his illustrations are just basically major moments that took place in New York City or like specific shoes to the brand of Nike. There's Spike Lee right there. I think that's McEnroe. Bill Buckner, Red Sox fans. That's coming out really strange, huh? So the basketball court. We got to design these custom bleachers that we were really excited about. The idea is basically them being about 38 feet wide, 18 feet deep, 12 feet high, and the exposed metal is actually the structure of the bleacher, and it's sat flush and inlaid with the wood, so it's a seamless transition from wood to metal. It's Michael Spojeric, who brought us on for the KD project, brought us on for this, and he said, I want the bleachers to be graphic, we should go crazy. And we were like, let's pull it back. Can we be graphic without being actually graphic? And we were able to do it with these lines, and he was extremely excited, so it worked out. You might have seen this in another project. It's Barkwood, it's real. They used it at Parsons a couple years back. Lynn Rice, I think. But we thought it would be a great opportunity to pay homage to Nike's roots in Portland. This was a logo done back in 1972, and it's just for Oregon running. We got an artist to come in and engrave, scratch out some of the bark. Designed a lot of environmental graphics. This is Jordan's free throw line dunk, his backsplash within the kitchen. This is, the third floor is the basketball themed floor. So these are just lines of the sport. I definitely think the sport is beautiful, so this is an opportunity to go crazy with icons. This is high density foam with a catalyzed lacquer as its finish. CNC milled. The Tag food truck. More wayfinding and signage. More collaborations with outside artists. This is Faust. He's a really good handwriting drawer, whatever he is. But I wanted to bring him in originally, yeah. For each conference room had a theme and named after a particular shoe. This is the Air Force One shoe, so we did the Air Force One sole patterning and just repeated it multiple times within the ceiling space, and it was a sound deafening material. These are the showrooms on the 4th floor. There's 4 of them, so Nike can display what Foot Locker, their plan for Foot Locker is for the next season within a space like that. The VW van. We did different graphics within these work booths. This is Carolina Muscasco. She's Portuguese, but living in New York. She's an architect, and she redid the New York City Marathon in AutoCAD. She's an amazing artist, and we are planning on using her again and again and again. These are the 4th floor tiles that theme was running. And then the roof. And just we put together this video, and it has Kendrick's, it's an instrumental of the Kendrick's music. And I had to sell the video a little bit. Nike's videos are always like what we showed for Katie earlier, like dun 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 dun. It's like, no, you can still be Nike with a different tone. So I'm glad we were able to pull it off. And that's all I got for you guys. Thank you.
So before you all pile out of here, Jonathan would probably stay for a couple questions. I'm sure there are some from the students, from the audience.
Early on in the lecture you mentioned...
Can you speak up?
Sorry. Early on in the lecture you mentioned that you had an idea of one or more things, where architecture is just everything all the time. But when you first transitioned from working as an architectural intern...
Sorry, can you say that again?
Sorry. When you first transitioned from working as an architectural intern to this sort of hybridized alternative practice, did you have of one or more things in mind from the beginning, or was it still a transition forward?
I think it was a quote that kind of, I found that in college we were working on it wasn't a thesis, I just went to a 5-year undergrad, but our final project, and we found that quote from Robert Heinlein, and then working at Archaea, I knew I wanted to have my own studio, and I knew at that time it wasn't just going to be architecture. Technically, we're still not doing architecture. So we still have some goals to reach. But yeah, I knew early on, like 22, 21, whatever that graduating year was. But I knew I had to pay my dues, and when it came time to actually paying the dues, I could only do it for 2 years, and I was I'm a pretty hard-headed person, so.
More questions?
What would you say is like one of the most interesting things that you've like learned from transitioning from being an architect or practicing architecture to this like more intimate type of practice?
Sorry, can you?
Okay.
What are the more interesting things?
Yeah, like what are some of the most interesting things that you've learned or like come across from transitioning from being an architectural intern to what you're doing now?
That's a tough one. I know Sarah and I have this fight. Like I harken back to it. Like what we've noticed is how much we are working with architects and how much they're working with us, and it's like daily for us. So what's interesting to me is the schools they're not preparing us for that. I mean, on a brighter note, I got to work with a guy that I wanted to work with when I was in school, David AIGA. And I was like, I sent him a letter in school, like I'm gonna work for you one day, and never heard back, of course. So when we were in a meeting on the museum, I told him I sent you a letter, and I told you I was gonna work for you, but working with you is actually just as good, so that's cool. It worked out, yeah.
So what is we have to speak up. Oh,
Sorry, translator. Okay. So you've kind of made this point, and we've talked about earlier about this sort of this connection, right, between say graphic, product, architecture. How then, as educators and the students, what can they do on their own? Because to sort of correct these mistakes or these sort of limitations.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many limitations. It's just the way the infrastructures are built, and I understand that. But in our meeting with the students today, I just simply brought up the idea of if an architecture professor and a graphic design professor are in line, you can assign a project that makes these two students work together on a building. And there's a constant dialogue between the two, and you actually can produce and present two different pieces of work, but somehow they work seamlessly together, and that can run along the same timeline as a project needs to run within the school environment.
How about something, are there say 2 or 3 classes that they have electives that you say as an architect, if you take these 2 or 3 classes in a visual arts program or graphic design program, they would help you a lot. Do you have a recommendation like that for students? Sorry to make it so pragmatic.
But I think it's something that we talked about earlier. Like you were interested in topography, and sorry, yes, okay, I get what you're trying to do now. Sorry, yeah. So you guys, you need to take a type design course that teaches you how to work with topography. And it sounds crazy, right? Because you're working in space, and you guys work in space every day. But oftentimes, architects are the worst graphic designers. But they think they're good, which is amazing. But yeah, I would strongly suggest discovering, it's in you, it's there, you're a designer, it's there. It's just manifested in a different way. Take a type class, you'll find even actually building type, that's a form of architecture that I see. You're building a system of how many characters do we have in our alphabet? 27?
26 last time.
Thank you. Yeah.
You said 27.
Yeah. But how that system can be cohesive and complement each other, and to me that's the same thing that we do with lighting, HVAC systems, materials, and then of course when we get to the space. So take a type course. Yeah.
I saw one more question. Yeah.
Who is it?
It's right sweater back there.
Keep your hand up. Oh, there you go.
With this idea of like doing everything and anything as like an architect or designer. Has your work been you going out and searching for any opportunity you can have, or accepting any opportunity of like any medium with pride, or has this evolved as you've done more work?
No, I mean, we've been on the lazy side. Everything has been word of mouth. But we need to be proactive. If we want to, I told the students earlier, we want to be doing more things in fashion. Like we had such fun with working with Scapes, and we really like the work that we produce, and we feel like we can be better. I think we need to be more proactive at getting those types of projects, getting in people's faces, asking for interviews. So, yeah. I see you.
Unlike you, I took like an undergrad from abroad, and then I'm here to take my graduates, and I see that a lot with a lot of my peers who might have interest to do like multidisciplinary, design, but what they do is that they are stuck working as architecture interns, and they only know the business side of designing in the architectural mindset, and I think that really set back every one of us to push that boundaries. And as you've told us that after you realized that what are the next steps that did you do? Did you actually do research? Did you work in other design firms, or did you just dive into it?
Yeah, well, one thing to address when you were talking about sort of the business side of architecture, are you saying that's a negative thing in your eyes?
More of it, we only know one business model.
One business model will get you so far. I'd delve right in with $1,200 in the bank, interning at Lindy Roy. My mom was pissed. I got fired on purpose, to be honest with you. I was doing more stuff on the side, trying to work on my graphic design skills, and it was eating up a lot of my actual day work, and I was just coming up with excuses of why I was sick. And she got fed up and said, it's time for you to go. And I was like, you know what, I agree. So, see you later. So yeah, it was a dumb move. A lot of things happened that were beneficial to me. Networking is a good tool too. Knowing how to talk to people genuinely. Don't fake it. Like, be yourself, but but the gift of gab is something that could be. As I struggle to say words, how about that, huh? But yeah, learning how to talk to people and understanding what you want to do. But yeah, I didn't go to another job or another internship after Lindy Roy's office. WeShouldDoItAll was able to survive just on small graphic design projects until Nike called in 2008. And that's kind of what changed the game for us. Having a consistent client. That's another thing. You get one consistent client, just one that can come back. It helps out so much.
I know I have many more questions, and you guys probably have more questions, but we're going to take the rest of those questions individually downstairs during the reception. Thank you all for coming. Thanks, Jonathan, for